Ethics in tech. It doesn't have to be an oxymoron.
This evening. We have wonderful presenters from Human Rights Watch, Campaign to Stop Killer Robots, Electronic Frontier Foundation, Ethics in Tech, and the Church of Fellowship of All People, followed by 4 comedians and our friend Debbie Durst, an advisor to Ethics in Tech. So it's going to be a fun night. But before we get to the program, I wanted to take a few minutes and tell you why we're doing this and its importance. As you know, we live in pretty strange times. This past few months, over 100,000 Americans have died and thousands more globally. And of course, with the murder of George Floyd, the streets of US broke out in peaceful protests. Both of these events showed us how our response to pandemics and our global response to things that can truly hurt us is ineffective. One thing we have discovered is, thanks to our military and our strong police force, we have plenty of rubber bullets, guns, tasers, batons to beat on protesters. But we sure don't have enough PPE equipment to protect the nurses and the people that work in the hospitals that are supposed to be saving our lives. It is at strange times when the US government decides to spend $740 billion plus on its defense industry, pulling out of nuclear treaties, investing $15 billion in a border wall, all of which cannot protect us from the tiniest little virus. So all these expenditures, in my view, are in the wrong direction. At Ethics in Tech, we always stood on the side of peace and promoting peace in our society. And we want to help technology folks make that decision and clear distinction of the work that they do in the tech sector matters, and the companies they work for matters. This day is the same day that Defense One Summit is taking place. If you go to my first slide, and I only have 2 slides. If you go to my first slide, Ethics in Tech found out about the Defense One Summit on June 16th through the 18th. These are some of the companies that are sponsors of Defense One Summit. Top of the name is Amazon Web Services and Amazon. Now, you might know Amazon as a company that's been running great ads saying how well they're protecting and responding to COVID-19. But did you know that they're working on the next generation of defense contracts and next generation of warfare by bidding on contracts from Jedi? Did you know that Amazon is responsible for providing infrastructure of up to $900 million worth to the CIA? Yet you trust them and you trust your shopping habits, your music watching habits, your listening devices of Alexa. You put the ring on your doors. And I think as a society, we need to have a choice that the companies that we do business with, that we buy our milk and music from, are not the ones that are trying to harm humanity, that are not trying to surveil on humanity. I'm guilty. I've worked for Amazon. I shop for Amazon on occasion because it's so convenient. But I just want to highlight that these companies are responsible for billions and billions of dollars in defense contracts that goes to them. And they are not really responsible to you as the consumer. Amazon may be viewed as a customer-centric company, but I argue that Jeff Bezos is beholden to the defense contractors, to the defense industry that give him billions of dollars for his AWS infrastructure, and not to the small business or to the consumers that he supposedly serves. So with that said, I want to move to the second slide. If you like what you hear, if you think what we say resonate with you, these are a number of Twitter handles, these are a number of Facebook accounts and pages. Please follow them. Give us, amplify our voice so we can be heard. So with that said, I want to introduce our first speaker. We really need a prayer for healing and peace at such difficult times. We need it more than ever. Ethics in Tech is a non-religious organization. We don't care if you're agnostic, atheist, or a man of faith. Everyone is welcome. But we believe in the power of prayer. We believe that it's hope for humanity. And at times like this, when we're facing so much death, destruction, and weapon systems and surveillance, we need a prayer more than ever. I would like to introduce Reverend Dorsey Blake from the First Fellowship Church of San Francisco. Reverend Blake teaches at the School of Pacific in transformational leadership. Dr. Blake is a dear friend of mine, and he's been an activist all his life, and I would like him to say a few words. Dr. Blake.
Can't hear you.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank Vahid for his vision in terms of ethics in tech, and for those who have gathered around him supporting this vision so that it becomes more manifest in our daily lives. I think we are living in a very difficult time, a perilous time, and yet a time of great opportunity. The events of the last few months have shown us that there is a great need for us to come together and recommit ourselves to issues of justice, peace. The recent events in terms of the pandemic, they've shown us that much of what we have been doing, much of our structures are antiquated and oppressive and need to be changed. We're not opposed to technology, for I must admit, without technology during this time of pandemic where we're sheltered in place, we would not be able to be here today to have this wonderful, wonderful meeting. I have a friend who wrote a book called Moral and Immoral Uses of Knowledge. So that is our concern about the ethical and unethical use of technology. For me, these days have been quite interesting and personal, and I'm grateful for some of the technology, because what the whole world is seeing now is what I've experienced throughout my whole life. Brutality, the brutality that was not recorded on video cameras. I have seen people abused and mocked and destroyed. Remember last year we commemorated 400 years of slavery in this country. So there is this gift that we have received in terms of people videotaping so much of what is going on. So it's no longer isolated Black people talking about what is happening to them in police brutality. The whole world has been able to see it. But it's also a great time of opportunity. One of the things that has really impressed me is that people in every city across the nation, globe, there has been this response. This response in terms of how awful what they have seen really is, that it goes against their values, that it is something that we must move past in terms of creating a new kind of world. That is one of the reasons our church came into being in 1944, actually, was to bring people together from all walks of life. We did not care what your religious thoughts were, or if you're religious or atheist or whatever, what your nationality was. We wanted people from various walks of life, various understandings to come together, because we felt as though if they came together and had significant spiritual experiences over a significant period of time, there would develop among them a sense of common ground that would undercut all the barriers that divide us. I think ethics in tech has the same kind of idea going forward. We're trying to bring people together from all walks of life, helping them to understand what is really going on, and hopefully providing a kind of forum and a community for us to change things, to build a new world, a new world of compassion, justice, a new world where people really do love each other, which means we take care of each other. Before going on, I would like for us to take some time for centering. And that is, I'd like for you, if you feel comfortable, to close your eyes and take a deep breath. And pull that breath up through the chest, the neck, the head, the top of the head, and just hold it there for a second. And release. Exhale. One more time, breathing from the abdomen, push the stomach out. Let the breath come up all the way to the top of your head. Hold it, release it. And one last time. George Floyd and so many others cannot breathe. Their breaths were taken away from them brutally. And yet we have the breath of life. Why? Because we have the breath that it takes to create something new. And we were brought into this world to testify to the oneness of life. Not only human life, but all life. We have breath. Let us breathe out. Let us bring aliveness and awareness to all those we encounter. Let us breathe new life into this world, into the oldest structures, into the old ways of being, so that new ways may come forth. We'll build a world where justice, compassion, mercy abide, where we find resonance with each other, where we strengthen each other, where we hold each other in love, where we create a future. Any past that we have experienced. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Blake. Thank you, Reverend Blake. Greatly appreciate it. We appreciate your advice and your wisdom within our organization. And we're glad that you have provided us your facilities in the past, your sermons as an inspiration. Next, I would like to move to our dear friends at Campaign to Stop Killer Robots, Mary Worm. Mary has been a global coordinator for the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots. She's been with Human Rights Watch for many years as the senior advocacy director for disarmaments. And she's a Nobel laureate from her work against landmines in 1996 and 1997, a co-laureate. So we're privileged to have her with us and looking forward to hearing what Campaign to Stop Killer Robots has been up to. Just give me 1 second as I do make the transition.
And thank you to Reverend Blake for those words. It's a great honor to speak to Ethics in Tech on this event on the eve of June 10th. I'm based here in Washington, D.C. And I work for Human Rights Watch. We've just issued a big report about Tulsa. and the race massacre that happened there 99 years ago this weekend. It feels like the weight of history is bearing down on us at the moment with what is happening at the moment on the streets, but also what has just happened so quickly in recent weeks with the pandemic. It's having an impact on my life, as I'm sure it is on all of yours. And it makes it probably challenging to think, how can we talk about campaigning to stop killer robots? But I'll say a few words about the campaign, and I look forward to hearing the other speakers. I thought just in my remarks that I would cover the what. What exactly are we talking about here with killer robots, the terminology, the why, and what are we actually trying to achieve with the campaign, and why now? How are we going to pull this off? There's a lot more that I could say, but so this is just going to touch on the surface, really. But we've taken a lot of heat since the campaign was initiated for our name, the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots. It was a deliberate decision by Human Rights Watch and the other non-governmental organizations that co-founded this coalition of organizations to go with that name. It's been a conversation starter. It's certainly an attention getter. And it's one that has enabled us to begin a dialogue, not just with governments, but also with the public. So we make no apologies for the name. And if you want to know the technical term of what the governments describe as killer robots, it's lethal autonomous weapons systems. And that is basically killer robots. The campaign was established in 2013 because we could see autonomy being incorporated into weapon systems already at that point. And as I was thinking about how to give these remarks in the context of a serious conversation, but also one that ends with comedians, I looked through a new report called Slippery Slope that colleagues and another co-founder of the campaign, Pax, put together last November, and it surveys the arms industry and increasing autonomy in weapon systems. When I was looking through this report, they give many examples of weapon systems that are in development today, and some are autonomous systems that are not yet weaponized. But I thought I'd just read off some of the names for you so that you could see what some major defense contractors are calling their weapon systems in cooperation with the US military and other countries. Of course, we're familiar with the Reaper and the Predator armed drones that were introduced at the beginning of the 2000s in Afghanistan and have been used in other attacks elsewhere. We're now seeing loitering munitions, ones that can loiter in the air and look for targets to attack. There's the Switchblade loitering munition. There's the War Mate, the Harpy. There are also autonomous fighter aircraft that are being developed, such as the Tyrannus, which is a very large autonomous fighter aircraft that will fly over a great distance. And this raises the question of what happens when it drops out of communications range. What do you program the computer on board to do? This is one of the drivers towards autonomy in weapon systems, is the distance, is the speed of weapon systems. And what happens when you can no longer communicate with the system on board. There's the Sea Hunter, an autonomous ship that is traveling the Pacific Ocean right now with no humans on board. They're instead following it in a training ship that is monitoring the ship's movements. And it's not armed yet, but this is another example for us. And then there's now the development of what we call swarms of much smaller autonomous weapon systems with some crazy names. I was looking through the report at the Gremlins and the Skyborgs. These are weapon systems that will be deployed en masse, not just in one single weapon system, but multiple ones. And all of this for us raises the question of human control. And what is the nature of human control over not just the entire weapon system? How is it programmed to manufacture? Is it the commander that sends it out? But what is the human control over the process of selecting a target and then firing on it? Those are the functions that we want to see remain under meaningful human control. So we see many different examples of autonomy in weapon systems, very big investments that have been led by the United States. China, of course, is investing, as is Russia, France, the United Kingdom, the permanent 5 members of the Security Council. We also see significant investments in autonomous weapon systems by Israel and South Korea, the robot nations. And now we're starting to see some worrisome developments coming from Iran and Turkey. But I could spend all of my time worrying about the various weapon systems that are coming out, or we could focus on what we're going to do about it, which is the purpose of the campaign to stop killer robots. So since the campaign was launched, there have been multiple debates that have come into being. One is the legal debate over the clarity of existing law and whether it is sufficient or not to deal with this significant threat to not just civilians in warfare, but also human dignity in policing and law enforcement, border control. There are many circumstances in which fully autonomous weapon systems could be deployed. I was looking at a report just today about policing and the proper management of assemblies. It was issued by the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Freedom of Peaceful Assembly and Association. And that report found that there's a growing range of weapons that are remote controlled that are becoming available, particularly in the context of policing of assemblies, and it urges great caution. It contains this line saying that where advanced technology is employed, law enforcement officers must at all times remain personally in control of the actual delivery or release of force. And it's this notion of human control that cuts across everything in terms of the debate right now. We've got some really big ethical concerns that have been raised, not least by developing countries who are saying, well, if this is what's coming next, we want no part of it. These are high-tech weapons that are being developed and that could end up being used on us in low-tech states. I'd say that the developing countries led by Pakistan, Cuba, and other countries from Latin America, from Africa, the Holy See, these are the countries who want to see regulation of fully autonomous weapons in the form of a new international treaty. And 30 of those countries seek a ban treaty, which is what the campaign to stop killer robots also desires. There is a desperate need to create the new treaty in order to provide operational guidance and to ensure accountability over individual attacks. But I think most important is the moral imperative to deal with autonomous weapon systems. And this notion that delegating life and death decisions to a machine is immoral and should not be done. This is because any killing orchestrated by a machine is arguably wrong, since machines cannot exercise human judgment or compassion. They're not endowed with reason or intellect. Humans are uniquely qualified to make moral decisions over the use of force, over the taking of another human life. And this is really the whole crux of the matter here. So when we talk about the international treaty, you often hear it'll be a ban treaty, it will take away something, but what it is seeking to take away is actually quite a positive thing. It's trying to prevent the deployment of weapon systems that lack that meaningful human control. So we want to establish the principle of human control over the use of force. We are in an interesting time, as we've heard already. Right now, we have the pandemic. We also face other major threats to humanity: climate change, nuclear weapons. And for the last few years, we've been trying to get the killer robots threat up the international agenda. And I would say that it's now up there and regarded as another pressing threat to humanity that must be managed. It's a massive risk. It's truly a global threat in that eventually everybody will be threatened by fully autonomous weapons. It's one that requires an urgent multilateral response. We didn't start the campaign to stop killer robots to have a debate. We're really glad to see all of the different debates that it has spurred, but we created it to establish regulation in the form of a new international treaty. And in our view, there are going to be areas of emerging tech and artificial intelligence that require rules. And this is probably one of the most pertinent examples. We are in a situation, though, where the diplomacy, there have been, I think, 8 meetings on killer robots at the United Nations in Geneva since 2014. And those meetings have involved not just a half dozen countries, but more than 90 nations have participated in these talks, along with the International Committee of the Red Cross, UN actors, a whole lot of academics, and then our campaign to stop killer robots. They truly are a multilateral deliberation. Where they stall, though, is on what to do about this threat. And that's because of the consensus-based nature of the decision-making forum that they're in. And we see at the United Nations that decisions by consensus often lead to the lowest common denominator decision, where you have to get to the real bottom of the agreement in order to get everybody to agree. And in this particular forum, we see that consensus is not applied equally, that certain countries, certain military powers, mainly the P5 from the Security Council, their views are what really carry the day. Smaller nations are not heard from as much. And that's why for us it's so important to encourage cooperation between like-minded countries, to get a core group of countries together that will help to lead the way towards the international treaty. And so while the diplomacy stumbles along, and it's digital at the moment, there are no meetings at the UN in Geneva at the present. And I think in New York, this year is the 75th anniversary of the founding of the United Nations. There was a whole lot of very big, important events planned for the opening this year. Much of it looks now like it will have to be virtual due to the pandemic. So in a way, the diplomacy is on hold, but that doesn't mean that our engagement is on hold. So there's an awful lot of activity going on by campaigners in capitals to try and reach political leaders, to try and get their attention and get their support for launching negotiations. We see some champions starting to emerge, at least in rhetoric, from Germany's foreign minister to the governments in Finland. Norway will change next year. I think Canada's Prime Minister Trudeau actually asked his foreign minister to seek an international treaty to ban killer robots. And while that's really important words on paper, they haven't yet been acted upon. And of course, the diplomacy for the United States right now is pretty much stalled with the leadership in office at the moment. The United States participates in the talks on killer robots, but it does not want to see any outcome. Basically, it says that it is premature to decide where these talks should go when we're still trying to figure out here the parameters of this. That's exactly what Russia says as well, that we cannot possibly move too soon. On our point of view, we see these developments coming together very quickly, and we're getting frustrated with that. So we're about at the point where there's going to have to be a break. And we may end up having to negotiate the treaty outside of United Nations auspices, potentially without the United States or Russia involved. And that would be a real shame, because we do want to have major powers involved in these agreements. But there are other ways to bring them in line. And I guess this is my experience from the campaign to create the international treaty banning landmines, as well as the Cluster Munition Convention, is that those are two pieces of international law that lack signatures from some of the major powers who have such weapons, but they also include many countries that once stockpiled and perhaps used those weapons. But they set a strong standard, they set a norm, they set something that everybody has to aspire to and to try to abide by. The other work that we're doing at the moment is very much, I think, exploring the different, we're still ourselves learning about autonomy and weapon systems and the technology and how it can be used to target certain individuals or groups of people. That's a very dangerous prospect, and that's one that we do not want to see misused or used at all. We're also doing a lot of work to engage with youth at the moment, from students to scouts, and that work was awarded this week with a Peace Prize from the city of Ypres in Belgium, which was a city that was affected by World War I and World War II, saw the use of chemical weapons, of landmines and other explosive weapons. And they have a Peace Prize that the children of the city get to vote on. This year, they voted for the campaign to stop killer robots. So I'm hopeful that that's a sign that the students, the children, understand this issue. I do not wish for us to have to leave it to them to try and figure out how we're going to resolve it. But it does give me hope for the future in that respect. That's pretty much all that I wanted to say. We did have Marta Kosmina, who spoke to you at previous Ethics in Tech events, and I really do miss Marta. She was not, she was consultant, so not a kind of permanent staff member, and is no longer doing that role. That was an important role for us to be able to engage with the tech sector out there on the West Coast, and we do hope to replace that capacity soon, because we need to have that support if we're going to be able to push this over the line. And we're very grateful for the support that individual artificial intelligence experts and roboticists have shown to this campaign to stop killer robots, as well as the tech workers at Google and some of the other major corporations who are supporting us as well from the sidelines. We have to create a very big tent campaign here, which is representative and truly global. So we're also reaching out to technologists across the global South. A lot of them are not called artificial intelligence experts, but just computer scientists. You know, they're in universities. They are there though, and we're looking for them. We're trying to connect them with the Nobel Peace Laureates, with the faith leaders, with the non-governmental organizations, human rights groups, humanitarian organizations that are part of this campaign, so that we can pull this off in the very near future. So please watch this space. Please check out the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots website and our social media channels. And I really hope that we can do more of these events, Vahid, and I really appreciate the work and the leadership that you've shown out in California.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mary. You said in regards to the campaign
and the work that you have done. I had the pleasure of meeting Martha, your
coordinator in the West
Silicon Valley, and she was so enthusiastic, and she got a chance to speak to our audience a few times, and it was a real pleasure to work with her. So we're looking forward to your continued presence in the West Coast. At the same time, you know, if there's anything that we could do to support the campaign, we're always there. I would like to take a moment now and introduce our next speaker, Mr. Brett Wilkins. Let me bring him up. Brett Wilkins is a colleague of ours at Ethics and Technology. He's on the board of Ethics and Tech. Brett has been working with me since 2014 in Ethics and Tech, covering the tech sector on our blog, ethicsandtech.com. He is a lifetime activist, a journalist for Digital Journal and for Ethics and Tech. And here you go, Mr. Brett Wilkins.
Good evening, and thank you to everyone here tonight. Welcome back to all of you who've attended our events before, and congratulations to the campaign to stop killer robots on their latest award. Kids always know what's up. I was originally planning to speak about developments in weapons technology as well, but current events had other plans for all of us. And so I'm going to speak briefly about state surveillance, specifically about state surveillance of Black people in various movements and uprisings, from the red summer of a century ago to the streets outside of your window right now. As long as there have been Black people standing up and fighting for the equality that we have so often been denied in this country, we've been answered with government surveillance and intimidation. It goes all the way back to the days of slavery, when Southern plantation owners and slave hunters used the latest technology of the day, which was the telegraph, to help track and catch runaways. 101 years ago, during the infamous Red Summer, President Woodrow Wilson, who was an open admirer of the Ku Klux Klan, gave moral support to white mobs who were lynching and in Elaine, Arkansas, machine gunning Black men, women, and children to death. The reign of terror wasn't just in the South, but all across the nation, from Boston to Bisbee, Arizona. In Washington, D.C., a young up-and-comer in what was then called the Bureau of Investigation named J. Edgar Hoover launched what would soon become a complex web of surveillance targeting not just Black people, but also anarchists, and especially labor unionists and anyone more than 2 steps to the left of center. Surveillance technology didn't really exist back then. The state relied more upon infiltrators for most of its intel gathering, but there would be plenty of time to improve the technology as the decades went on. 2 generations later, Hoover was still in charge of the FBI, and by this time, the 1960s, the movement for Black liberation had reached its glorious crescendo as giants like Stokely Carmichael, Angela Davis, Huey P. Newton, and of course Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. led us toward the light of liberation. The powers that be were terrified of this, although they should have considered themselves blessed that Black people saw only equality and not revenge. Nevertheless, the government, especially under Richard Nixon, felt the need to place Black people under some of the most intense and illegal surveillance ever experienced in the history of this nation. It was called COINTELPRO. In addition to state-of-the-art bugging and other eavesdropping surveillance, the FBI resorted to downright dirty tricks like sending Dr. King a letter urging him to kill himself. As during the Red Summer, COINTELPRO wasn't limited to Black power activists. Feminists, anti-war activists, Vietnam was raging, and of course those old favorite boogeymen, the communists, were targeted as well. Mark Twain once said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme. And here we are in 2020, living in another period of hyper-surveillance. It was already gearing up before 9/11, and it was supercharged in the Bush-Obama era when the Patriot Act, NSA global surveillance, and other institutionalized violations of our constitutional rights became the new normal under which we now all live. And while technology's techniques and tactics may change, the targets remain the same. It's us. It's not news, nor is it a secret, that federal, state, and local law enforcement are using surveillance technology to monitor Black Lives Matter and other peaceful protesters as we sit here tonight. Electronic eavesdropping with stingrays and other cell phone surveillance system, license plate readers, algorithmically biased facial recognition software, drones, text message interception, and other tools of the trade give government and increasingly militarized police daunting abilities to target, trace, and track us as well as our communications. They tell us we have nothing to fear if we're not doing anything wrong, but we know that's a lie. When a racist administration and emboldened police classify peaceful protesters as thugs, terrorists, and officially Black identity extremists, when police protect and cooperate with Nazis, that happened right here in California recently, while brutalizing and even killing innocent Black men, women, and children. And when the response of tens of millions of Americans to these outrages is to obstinately declare that all lives matter, we know we have something to fear indeed. And as always, it's not just Black people. Anti-fascists, leftists of various stripes, climate change activists, animal rights activists, Muslims, immigrants and their allies fighting to close the latest iteration of American concentration camps, digital rights advocates, and maybe even some of you are being watched, sometimes in ways we don't even know about yet. The COVID-19 pandemic and the rise of under-the-skin surveillance presents a frightening glimpse of things to come and coming soon. Yet, we do win when we fight back. Remember SOPA? Remember PIPA? You'd be forgiven if you don't, for through grassroots organizing and activism, these surveillance state measures, which seemed something close to a done deal at the time, were ultimately defeated. And so we must remain as vigilant as ever, and we must stand together to fight against unconstitutional state surveillance, just as we stand together against police brutality and racism. As dire as the situation is, we are fortunate to live in a time when there are amazing groups like Ethics in Tech the Campaign to Stop Killer Robots, and the Electronic Frontier Foundation. Support them, join them. Keep fighting the good fight because a different world is possible, but only if we make it so. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the comedians.
Thank you so much, Brett. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks for representing ethics in tech as always. You know, we're a nonprofit organization. We're thankful to organizations that support us along the way. We have never reached out to corporate America for funding, and we've been funded through the support of viewers like you that have come to our previous events. One of the organizations that we started working on early on back in 2013, putting events together, was Electronic Frontier Foundation. We found there's values to be in line and we support them in their endeavors. And we belong to Electronic Frontier Alliance, which is a partner network of Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is a number of grassroots organizations that have collaborated under the EFA umbrella. We're lucky tonight that we have Adam Schwartz from Electronic Frontier Foundation. He's a senior attorney working on surveillance as well as traveler rights across borders and the COVID-19 surveillance to do the next presentation. Adam, before working at AFF, spent 19 years at the ACLU, so he's been on the right side of the law protecting civil liberties for many, many years. We're grateful to have Adam here with us tonight. Give me 1 second to make sure he's unmuted. And Adam.
Great. Well, I'd like to begin by thanking Vahid and Ethics in Tech for having me here, and the fellow panelists, and everyone who's listening in here. It's a real honor and a pleasure. I will be talking about the threat to our digital rights posed by the COVID crisis. We, of course, are in extraordinary times with a raging pandemic, which is a great threat to all of our lives and health and our economic and emotional well-being. At EFF, we view it as our mission to make sure that as we try to come out of this crisis, we do the least possible damage to our privacy and other digital rights. We live in a time where governments and corporations are demanding all kinds of new surveillance powers in order to meet the public health crisis. But when we scratch under the surface, many of them are the same old plans and invasions of privacy that we've seen governments and corporations seeking for a very long time. So there are several of our liberties that are in play here. Privacy, of course, we already are greatly under scrutiny and through all of our interactions with technologies, and governments and corporations have become expert at mining that. It's a threat to our First Amendment rights to assemble and protest because people are chilled from participating when they fear this surveillance. It's a threat to racial justice because the more that we focus on these apparent quick fix technologies, the less attention and resources we have to meet the needs of the people of color who are tragically being left behind in public response to this public health crisis. So when we hear any proposals of new technologies of surveillance in this time of COVID, we ask three questions. The first is, will it even work? And many times it won't, in which case we just oppose the technology. Our second question is whether or not, even if it works, it would be too intrusive on our liberties. So just for example, we have opposed NSA mass surveillance of the internet for almost 2 decades. Even if it might rarely be effective in breaking up a terrorist ring, its impact on our liberties is simply too great. And number three, when a technology might be effective and is not too burdensome on our liberties to be considered at all, we ask whether there are sufficient safeguards, including consent, data minimization, anti-discrimination rules, and insurance that the program will end with the COVID crisis. And we approach this against a backdrop where over time, in times of crisis, government seizes powers, and when the crisis abates, government keeps the powers. And we have to make sure that that is not true here in the time of COVID. Before I turn to particular kinds of technological proposals that EFF has been struggling with, as we all have in the last 3 months. I want to emphasize that this is not a case of public health versus our rights, because when government adopts public health responses that are too burdensome and intrusive of our rights, it actually is dangerous to our public health. Studies show that when the public does not trust the government, that the public does not comply with suggestions from the government to meet the crisis, that people are more likely to socially distance and to wear masks and to do the other things the government is recommending when the government is seen as trustworthy. So for example, in the AIDS crisis a generation ago, the criminalization of transmission of HIV had the unintended consequence of discouraging some people from getting testing. And so we want to make sure that government takes an approach that is not too heavy-handed. So number one, there are a lot of proposals afoot to surveil the entire public and try to identify individuals who should not be out and about, either because they are known infected persons or because they are symptomatic. And we think this is a very bad idea, both because the technology is completely unproven and deploying it will just put new hardware in place that's hard to roll back when the crisis is over, and also because it is another step forward towards permanent government surveillance of all of our movements. So for example, there are proposals to put more cameras in place to do face recognition of passersby to identify patients, proposals in place to do remote body temperature checking to identify people who are feverish, proposals to put all of this on drones and have the eye in the sky that is looking for faces and looking for people with elevated temperature. This is all a very bad idea, and we oppose it. Number two, there are proposals to do electronic surveillance of patients who are known by the government to be infected and have been told to stay home and separate from others. Proposals to enforce this by electronic means. We're seeing in foreign countries that people are being forced to download apps onto their phones, which turn their phones into location tracking tools, so that if they step with their phone out of their home, a button beeps at the police department and they send officers out. We're seeing in foreign countries, people are made to wear GPS ankle shackles in order to stay in their home. In some countries, drones are looking in the windows of apartments with cameras, and people are expected to present their face to the window so that they can confirm that they're still at home. There are proposals, or it's actually being done in some countries, that patients have to have their phone, and when they receive pings at random times from the government, they have to take a selfie and transmit that selfie with a time and place stamp back to the government. So we are a hard no on these kinds of proposals. Fortunately, they have not been hitting the United States yet. Hawaii was thinking about requiring everyone who got off a plane and was told to quarantine for 2 weeks to engage in this until, fortunately, their state's attorney general raised legal questions. So number three, we need to have a very high wall between data that is gathered about people for public health on the one hand, and the operations of law enforcement and immigration enforcement and intelligence agencies on the other hand. So we were very troubled a few weeks ago when Minnesota's public safety director analogized that state's attempts to identify protesters who were accused of arson and other crimes by interrogating people who've been arrested to create sociographs on the one hand, to contact tracing for purposes of COVID on the other hand. These simply are different categories that we need to keep separated. Law enforcement should not get the data being used for contact tracing. And so, for example, we strongly oppose the suggestion that police officers should be given lists of addresses of houses where someone has been infected. This has been suggested so that when officers arrive at a home with someone who's infected, they could take extra precautions. We think this is a very bad idea because it's stigmatizing, because the more people who have access to the information, the less it's controlled, and because officers should be taking universal precautions when they are interacting with the public. So again, we need to have no sharing of data gathered to fight COVID with law enforcement and immigration enforcement. Number 4, we are opposed to immunity passports and a related idea that is sometimes being called verified credentials, which has to do with blockchain, and I will explain that. There is a vision of how we get out of the social distancing at home process that we've been in for a very long time through a process of somehow identifying who is sick and who is ill and conditioning entry to public spaces such as restaurants or workplaces or schools or parks on display of proof that you are not ill. And one of these would be the immunity passport, which could be paper or a digital token on your phone, which shows that you are immune. The other would be the verified credential that you again would show on your phone. That would be proof that you are not currently infectious. So we oppose and there's actually legislation in California, Assembly Bill 2004, which is trying to authorize and entrench the system of verified credentials that I've just described, in which EFF and ACLU and other privacy groups have been lobbying strongly against. It left the state assembly by a majority vote a week or two ago. We're hoping to kill it on the Senate side. And so we oppose these kinds of things for many reasons. Perhaps most importantly, we are sliding as a society towards a system of universal digital identification that we would have to display when we do anything: rent a hotel, buy something, pass through a door, go to a bar. And so we are alarmed at the idea that public places would require people to flash their phones to transmit a digital token in order to prove wellness to get through there. It habituates institutions to doing this. It habituates the general public to complying with this. Moreover, there's no reason to think these schemes would work. As to immunity, the World Health Organization has said that there is no scientific reason right now to believe that having been infected once gives you immunity from being infected a second time. And as to proving that you're not currently infectious, that could change very quickly. So if you had an infection, if on day one you took the test and you weren't infected and you get your token of non-infectiousness, the next day you get infected and be asymptomatic. And on the third day, you're still showing your token of health. So we are very much opposed to the verified credentials of medical tests and the immunity passports as being a part of how we get out of the lockdown. And to be perfectly clear, we all hate the lockdown. It's especially bad for lower income people for many reasons. But turning to this kind of phony technology solution is not the answer. Number 5, there are a lot of proposals to have tracking systems on our phones to detect who we are in contact with so that we can automate the contact tracing process. This is one of the most common proposals being laid out around the world. Some of it is very alarming. Some of it is less alarming and requires, I would say, a wary approach, but not one of a hard no. What contact tracing is a centuries-old process of trying to contain an outbreak by, when you identify someone as infected, interviewing them about who they've been in contact with and where they've been, and then talking to those people in turn and seeing if they're infected and carrying out the process. And as we stand right now, there are efforts by many states to build up very quickly large infrastructures of contact tracing, and that clearly is important. It also is expensive and cumbersome, and it can be slow. So there was an episode in the last month where one person caused an outbreak by bar hopping in Korea, and they ultimately identified hundreds of people who had been infected. And in order to do that, they had to interview many thousands of people. So it's a big undertaking. So we can sympathize with the desire to come up with the magical app that will solve this problem for us, and very quickly identify who's been in contact with who, and bypass this historical cumbersome approach. This idea carries great privacy concern. As soon as you are using digital devices to map where people have been and who they've been in contact with and store this information somewhere, you are playing with privacy fire, because this information could be put to all kinds of nefarious uses, such as identifying who was at the protest and who was in contact with who at the protest, and who was planning for the protest. So one has to take a very fine-grained approach to this problem of the automated contact tracking apps. There's a category that we are a hard no on, which is doing this with location data. That is to say, our phones are constantly interacting with the GPS system in the satellites and the cell site system, our phones being in contact with cell towers. And a problem with this is that it simply is not granular enough to show that two people were within 2 meters or 6 feet of each other. It is, however, sufficient to show whether you went to work, whether you went to the movies, whether you went to a hospital that performs abortions. Information that simply is nobody's business. And so when it comes to automated contact tracing with apps that are based on location, such as GPS and cell site location information, we are a hard no. Fortunately, in the United States, a more common idea is to try to do this not with location data, but with proximity data. There is an existing infrastructure called Bluetooth, in which all kinds of different devices are in communication with each other, such as our phones and our earbuds and all kinds of other things. And the system might be retrofitted in order to detect signal strength and thereby estimate whether two devices were within 6 feet of each other. So the theory goes, and if we do this, that if you download the app to do automated proximity tracking, your phone would constantly be announcing a kind of random token, and other people with the app would be recognizing it and keeping it. You in turn would be capturing other people's tokens. And then if somebody gets ill and is confirmed as being ill by a doctor, all of the tokens they sent out get sent to a shared server. And the system is set up so that automatically everyone with the app their app is constantly asking for the list of tokens from the central server and checking to see if there's a match between the central server list of ill people and the tokens that the particular user collected. And if there's a match, they get a notification that they might have been exposed with a recommendation to seek a test and to self-isolate until then. So this system, many things need to be said about it. Number one, it might not work. Nothing like this has ever been tried before. We see all kinds of reasons for doubt that it works, one of which is that it's going to be both over-inclusive and under-inclusive. It's going to think that two people were in contact when they were separated by a wall, and it's going to think people were not in contact when one of them didn't carry their phone with them or didn't download the app. In the United States, 1 in 5 people don't have a smartphone. Around the world, the rate of not having a smartphone is much higher. And so at best, any kind of system of apps like this is going to have to be an adjunct to the tried and tested methods of mass contact tracing of the manual and interview sort, as well as a lot of testing. One big division that is much talked of here is between a centralized system, which means that there's someone in the middle who can match the tokens to identifiable people. We're strongly against that. Many of the states are now developing these apps. We are not thrilled with them because they're doing location or because they're centralized. To their credit, Apple and Google have set up an API for these, which has a decentralized approach that is focused just on the proximity and not on location. So the final thing I want to say is that a lot of the government's response to COVID is to form partnerships with corporations. For example, websites that ask people their symptoms so that the website can direct them to testing, or the apps that I've just been describing, or the contact tracing, where corporations are being hired to set up the infrastructures to do the manual contact tracing. There's a lot of data floating around, and unfortunately, for a very long time, America has not had enough laws to protect people's data privacy. And the COVID crisis is really shining a spotlight on that, which is why around the country, including here in California and in Congress, there's been a lot of bills being filed that would create new data protections to ensure that corporations don't walk away with this data and start sending us ads with it, and that governments don't walk away with this data and start using it for law enforcement or whatever they are doing with it. So the watchword needs to be data minimization, that we collect as little information as we need, we keep it for the shortest period of time, which might be weeks, we only use it for COVID response, and we don't share it with anyone who's not part of that COVID response. So thanks everyone for attending this terrific event. Again, I'm very appreciative of Ethics in Tech for having us. If you are interested in what you're hearing, we have a lot more about this at EFF.org. If you want to help out, join our action alert system, and we'll send you pings when you need to call your legislators and tell them to support strong legislation to keep our COVID data locked down. Thank you very much.
Adam, thanks for your presentation. You know, we live in a scary time. It seems our data is not owned by us anymore. It's owned with government agencies, private corporations, and anybody else that can get their hand on it. And now putting in more tools in the hands of the government to be able to track us is a pretty scary world that we're going to be living in. With that said, I would like to break for the comedy portion of the night with all the help of, first, let me do a quick shout out to Lewis and Nash at EFF for helping us out with all this and getting our events out to their members. But I want to follow up with our comedy, but before we go to Debbie Durst and the comedians, I would like to play a video of one of our older comedians, Will Durst, on our previous events. We wish him a healthy recovery, and here's the video. Do you have audio? Okay, great. Our apologies. It's our first time doing these live events. In the past, we had them in person, where I would be toasting you with a glass of wine and a pizza. Now it's a live events, and we run into a little technical difficulty in playing the video. But it was a video of Will Durst, basically talking about ethics in tech from one of his previous events. And Will was supposed to be at our last event in December and unfortunately couldn't make it. But lucky for us, we have Will as an advisor to our organization. See, our advisors reflect the larger community that we come from. So from attorneys to folks in the legal professions, musicians, ecologists, environmentalists, comedians, they advise us. And my dear friend Debbie Durst is going to be talking next and doing the intros of the comedians. So give me a quick second while I unmute Debbie and put her on center stage.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for coming tonight. It's a great honor to be hanging out with these great bunch of people. Will would love to be here, but I'm not quite sure everybody knows that Will Durst, who is probably America's foremost political comedian, had a stroke back in October. He is recovering. With this pandemic going on, it's kind of iffy. He hasn't really had any physical therapy going on, but I've made some calls, and I actually am getting him into the stroke clinic up at UCSF next week, so he can be evaluated by a real doctor in person and get a referral so we can actually start physical therapy again. He's doing well. All of this is it's costing a lot of frayed nerves here at the Durst household. I'm living with 2 cats right now, and I'm wearing one right now. We've got a GoFundMe page up for Will. This is it's costing money to keep him where he is. Presently, the left side of his body is not working. We want to get his arm and his leg working again. So I'm just going to plug the GoFundMe page. If any of you have a buck or two to throw in there, it would be greatly appreciated. You can go to GoFundMe and search for Will Durst, or you gofundme.com/F/Will-Durst-needs-your-help. And the love that we have seen from people so far has been amazing. I want to thank Vahid for this platform today, and it's been a great pleasure to come up with some friends who are comedians who actually do this for a living when they're not stuck in their homes, to make people laugh out loud on purpose. These first couple of people that I'm going to introduce, I have known for quite some time. I think we go back into the last century together. In the comedic tradition of Nichols and May, Burns and Allen, Bonnie and Clyde, the Mike and Mari Show offers a satirical look at how political upheaval, society tensions, and tech befuddle and displace the common person. Ladies and gentlemen, we now bring you the lovely Michael Bossier and Mari Magaloni, aka Mike and Mari. Enjoy.
Welcome to AT&T. To continue in English, say 1. For German, say 2. Para continuar en español, diga 3. For more options, say more options.
1 English.
You have chosen Jamaican. To continue, say 1 love.
1 English.
Okay, English. Now, tell us what you are having problems with, like, I want to pay my bill, or I'm having trouble paying my bill, or I'd like to set up a plan so I can pay my bill.
Talk to a human being.
Okay. Did you know you can find answers to most of your problems by logging on to the My AT&T app and going to the help section?
What if I need help talking to a human being?
I'm sorry. This system does not understand sarcasm. To reach an operator, please say operator.
Operator.
I heard operator. Is this correct?
Yes.
I heard yes. Is this correct?
Yes, operator.
Briefly state the purpose of your call.
Trouble with phone delivery.
Before I connect you, would you like to take a brief survey on why you no longer wish to speak to an automated system?
No.
Is it the tone of my voice?
Operator.
Okay. Before I connect you, for your convenience, please speak or enter all 10 digits of your telephone number.
925-777-1234.
I heard 9. Is this correct?
Yes.
I heard 2. Is this correct?
Yes.
I heard 5. Is this correct?
You're not going to do this 10 times, are you, operator?
Operator, I will connect you now.
It's about time.
The time at the tone is 8:56.
Operator.
Connecting. Due to a higher than expected call volume, your wait time is approximately 3 hours and 15 minutes.
How is this unexpected? You've had the same message for a year. Hire more people.
We appreciate your waiting and being a valued member of the AT&T family.
Thank God, a human being.
May I have your phone number?
All right, 925-777-1234.
Thank you for that. I heard 9. Is that correct?
Yes.
I heard 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
I heard 5. Is that correct?
Are you toying with me?
For your added security, what is the name that your ex-girlfriend called you in an email dated October 13, 2010 at 1:56 a.m.?
How do I know that? I don't even know who my girlfriend was in 2010.
I have Bobby Badwetter. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Oh, no. You know what? I want to talk to a supervisor.
You want to talk to a supervisor?
Yes, I want to talk to your supervisor.
Or would you be interested in a brief survey to rate my service?
Supervisor.
Hello, this is a supervisor. May I have your telephone number?
No. You see, you're the same person that I just talked to, and you know my number.
Sir, you asked to talk to a supervisor, and I am my own supervisor. You have a problem with me being a supervisor, I could transfer you to a brief customer survey to help us better serve you, the customer.
Look, I ordered a phone a week ago. It was supposed to be here yesterday. It's not here. Doesn't anybody there care about my problems?
Sounds like you want to talk to our chief empathy officer. I'll connect you right away.
No. My battery's dying. Don't.
Hello? This is AT&T's chief empathy officer. I can help. I'm Shirley.
Hello, Shirley. I'm 92577.
I know. Shoo. I know. And you don't have your brand new iPhone.
Are you playing with me?
I'm here for you, sir.
Really? Like the way my phone was supposed to be here for me?
Oh, I know. Sometimes it feels like those companies plan for the products to fail once the contract runs out, huh?
You're telling me I ordered a phone and they locked me in this 2-year contract and they wouldn't let me out?
Oh, well, I'm not going anywhere until we solve your problem. You're a member of the AT&T family. We love you.
Really? Is it love or just some customer satisfaction rating?
Oh, why are you being so cold, Robert? Can I call you Robert?
Why don't you just call me by the digits of my phone number?
Oh, hey, how would you like more data for your troubles?
No, you can't buy me off.
Know what? I'm going to enroll you in the unlimited data plan with HD streaming, free hotspot, and no throttling over 5 gigabytes.
I don't even know what you mean.
You don't need to know. You just need to have faith in your global telecommunications provider. All you want is to connect.
I guess.
Well, then it's done.
What's done?
I'm putting in a request to the technician specialist to deliver and set up your iPhone right now.
But,
No, there's no turning back now.
what do you mean?
Don't you remember what you signed? Oh, never mind. Nobody ever reads it anyway. To us, you're not 925-777-1234. You're a member of our AT&T coven.
Coven?
You're our Robert. Can I call you Robert?
Oh, that's my name.
Oh, Robert. I could get into trouble for telling you this. They're always listening. They record everything. I feel a special connection to you.
I don't care who's listening. You know what? Damn AT&T. I think I feel it too.
Oh, Bobby. All I know is that the system works, and together we're going to get you your new phone.
Oh, yes.
In order to complete your order, all I need is that little 4-digit passcode of yours, and you'll be safe and secure in the bosom of the AT&T family for another 2 years.
Yeah, I don't remember those, 4 little numbers.
Huh? Well, I can't finalize our agreement without those 4 little digits.
Well, I have them written down somewhere.
I really need it, Bobby.
Oh, I really want to give it to you.
Give it to me, Bobby. I need it now.
Okay. 7.
Yes.
3.
Good.
2.
Yeah?
6.
No.
Yeah, I think that's right. 9.
Mm-mm.
3. 5.
That's incorrect.
Oh, really? I really want to give it to you. I do.
Not without protection.
All right. Okay. I'll tell you what. You give me your number. I'll look for the numbers. I'll call you back.
No means no.
No, really. I'll call you back. We're family. Hello? Hello?
Welcome to AT&T. To continue in English, say 1. For German, say 2. Para continuar en español, diga 3.
Debbie, you're on.
Those kids always make me laugh. Hysterical. I'm very proud to introduce your next comedian for this evening. Nato Green is the country's only semi-functional hybrid of comedian and union organizer. You can check out his last album called The Whiteness Album and his podcast, The Bituation Room, with Francesca Fiorentini. The Episcopal Archbishop once called him the Antichrist. Ladies and gentlemen, a friend of mine and a fellow San Francisco native, Mr. Nato Green.
Shalom, everybody. How you doing? What's up, tech people? It's good to talk about tech and ethics. I think the biggest problem with the tech people is that they are inventing the wrong stuff. They're not inventing the things that we need. Do you know what I mean? Now we have it's wildfire season starting in California. Now I have a new thing to be afraid of, which is fire cyclones. Now we have fires that go 200 miles an hour in California. It's like, hey, tech people, could you maybe invent something that will stop a fucking fire cyclone? And the tech people are like, no, we're busy. We're inventing Shazam for soup. Hey, tech people, the IPCC climate report says that we only have 12 years to reduce carbon emissions enough to avert the catastrophic collapse of civilization. Could you maybe invent something to suck the carbon out of the sky? And the tech people are like, no, we're busy. We're inventing Uber for Uber. So like if you don't have Uber, you can see who around you has Uber and then get that guy to call you an Uber. So we're going to do that first, and then we'll suck the carbon out of the sky later. It's like, people, focus. And you know, some people like NATO, do you hate technology? Like you talk a lot of shit about technology, but then you use all the technology. Are you a hypocrite? No, I'm not against technology. Like I don't think technology fundamentally changes us. It reflects who we are. Do you know what I mean? Technology amplifies our culture and values. Like human beings did not become narcissistic fuckheads when we invented selfie sticks. Like throughout human history, people would sit for hours and like to have an oil portrait painted of themselves, and they would hang it on their wall. Be like, look, here's a picture of me in my manor looking down upon my serfs and my lands. Hashtag squad goals, hashtag winning, hashtag blessed, hashtag living my best life. And everyone who could afford to do that did that, and now we can all do that, and so that's what we do. Like the you know, like here's a thought: technology just reflects the culture of the people who invent it. Like here's a thought experiment. In my neighborhood in San Francisco, we have 2 buses that go. One is the Google bus that takes people to work in Silicon Valley, and 2 is the Immigration Customs Enforcement deportation bus. This was before COVID. And let's just imagine that through a hilarious turn of events, the buses were switched. And a bunch of computer programmers were dropped off into the loving embrace of the Sinaloa cartel in northern Mexico. And a bunch of undocumented migrant workers were dropped off at high-tech campuses across Silicon Valley. And because people don't look up from their screens to make human contact, no one noticed. There would still be technology. It would just reflect a different set of values if it was immigrants making it. It was all undocumented immigrants. Like there would be Tinder, but for consent. Do you know what I mean? Like there would be like an app. Say you have a brick and you want to smash a window and riot, but then you realize it's your neighborhood and you like these local businesses. You don't want to smash the windows, and so then you click on the app and a car comes and takes you to the nearest rich neighborhood so you can go riot over there. It'd be called Uplift, or there'd be like an app for like wearables. There would still be wearables. It'd be Google Glass, but for police to wear to see black people as human, just like a different set of values would be reflected. Or an app that you could use to put white guys on mute. That'd be called the white noise machine. So all those things are possible. So now the tech industry is going to the ballot in California this year. They're going to fight AB5. They want to, Uber and Lyft and DoorDash want to protect their right to use independent contractors, or freelancers as they're called. Freelancer derives from the linguistic root of free, which is how much you get paid as a freelancer, and lance, which refers to being stabbed repeatedly by your employer for sport and spectacle. Now, employers like using independent contractors or freelancers because they legally can't unionize and are not entitled to minimum wage and overtime. And workers like being classified as independent contractors because it gives them the freedom to fuck off and die on their own terms. And they like that. They like that flexibility. So originally, the idea of the independent contractor was like a very limited concept of like a consultant, like a real professional. They get a flat rate. They'd walk into your company, just look around and shout like total quality management, feng shui, efficiency. And then they would take their money and fuck right off to Hawaii. And now it's like taking over everything. And so AB5 was passed to address like companies like Uber and Lyft. And one of the ideas of the law is that a company cannot legally classify you as an independent contractor if what that you do is core to their business. And so Uber very cleverly tried to make all of its drivers sign something that says that they agree that Uber's business is as a tech company and not a car service. And this is very clever. It's like the owners of the NFL football teams announcing that football games, the game itself is secondary, and their primary business model is giving brain injuries to black men. What else? Elon Musk is the single greatest argument that Nelson Mandela should have killed more white people in South Africa. So the lingering consequence of apartheid. Tesla has new products. They have a cyber truck. It's a giant truck. It's bulletproof. It's machine-like, and it can automatically parallel park. It's sort of built for people who are afraid and want to protect themselves against urban uprising, but also want to be able to parallel park. So they're like jerks, but also polite. Now, Elon Musk is getting a $700 million payout of stock options, despite for much of the shelter in place, they've been making no cars. So there's no supply and high demand. That's how you do it. That's Econ 101 for you. That's why he's getting paid a lot of money, just for the demand. My favorite Elon Musk thing recently is the Elon Musk baby. The baby's name is XAE-A12 Musk. So let's unpack it briefly. X, the unknown variable. AE is the Elven spelling of an artificial intelligence, setting up that long-awaited Legolas Terminator crossover buddy flick, the Elven AI thing. And A12 is the precursor to the SR-17, which is Grimes and Elon Musk's favorite aircraft, which raises the question, if you ever want to know how rich is too rich, the answer is if you have a favorite aircraft. So it gets worse, though. XAE-A12 is pronounced Kyle, because X is the Greek letter Chi, AE is AI, and 12 is the 12th letter of the alphabet, which is L. So coming up with this complicated formula, XAE-A12, and pronounce it Kyle, never in the history of humanity has something been so pretentious and so lame at the same time. It'd be like if when Prince changed his name to the Symbol to get out of that record deal, while the symbol visually contained the symbols of male and female, he told us that it was pronounced Dongmeister. In conclusion, rise up, everyone. I just have to tell you one more thing. This is my favorite thing of late, which is since the George Floyd murder and the protests, there was a public opinion poll out recently that 42% of Americans support Donald Trump, 46% of Americans support Joe Biden, and 54% of Americans support literally burning down the police station in Minneapolis. So that's amazing to me. That means that I look forward to the 2020 winning presidential ticket of burning down a police station and a free Palestine. That's a winning ticket for me. And so 54% of Americans support burning down the police station, which again raises the question, what did the other 46% of people think? And I looked at the crosstabs of the poll. 12% of them thought that you shouldn't burn down the police station. 23% thought that you should burn down all the police stations. 5% thought that you should have stacked all the police stations on top of each other and then tipped them over. And then there were 6% who thought, I'm mad because I wanted to be the one to burn down the police station, and that guy did it first. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Ethics and Tech. Thanks, Debbie Durst. Rise up.
Thanks, NATO. Thanks so much, NATO. Thanks. That kid can always make me laugh. And speaking of making you laugh, this next kid, literally, I knew him when he was a kid, when his comedy was in black and white. And now he's moved on to full color. He used to play football, not professionally, but over his 30-plus career in comedy, this marvelous man, has headlined across the United States. He's hosted his own daily radio and TV talk shows, both in San Francisco, and he's written humor for people ranging from corporate CEOs to the late, great Robin Williams. Ladies and gentlemen, this man straight from Berkeley to you, Mr. Johnny Steele.
Unmute me. Am I unmuted?
Yes. Yeah, you're unmuted. Yeah. Unmute.
Saying unmute more. You can hear me, right? Yeah? All right. I think unless I see the unmute again, I'll know. All right. Well, that's it. My time's up, apparently. We only have this room rented until 8 o'clock, and then we're going to pay a heavy fee for going overtime. So I can't see the screen. NATO Green super woke jet wash is in the way. I didn't. He thought it was ethnic and tech, not ethics and tech. I think he got a little off. And I tried to heckle during NATO, but unfortunately they had me muted. So, well, thanks for having me. This talking about tech, comics are dealing with this now in a way never before, because prior to this, we went to comedy clubs. You get in your car and you drive to the club, and then you get on stage and there are people in the room. And so that's not happening now. And so this is what's happening. And it's really weird for some of us because for 25, 30 years, we did the comedy in the club for the people. And so people call me now and say, hey, you want to do the show on the Zoom? And I say, how does that work? And they say, well, you'll perform in your living room. And I said, well, where will the audience be? Well, there'll be no audience. Well, sort of, they'll be at home or around the country somewhere. And maybe if you see them at all, they'll be the size of a chiclet in the corner, and mostly you won't hear them. And I said, well, that sounds that sounds great. And so this is how we're doing this now. And it just, as a comic, you can sort of see that the equivalent would be if you got, since NATO was talking about football, quarterback Tom Brady and said, can you throw some passes? You look like you throw some great passes. Yeah, I can throw the ball to anybody, anywhere. How about it? Can you throw it left-handed? Well, not really. Try to throw it left-handed for a while, and I'll give it a try. Hey, by the way, can we blindfold you? And the receiver won't be there. He'll be at home on a phone, and you'll see a stamp. Sure. So bear with us, comedians. Everyone's doing a good job. But NATO, aren't you a union organizer? Aren't the police in a union? Anyway, just checking that out there. Anyhow, so the weird thing about this is comedy in generally is like this, but tonight especially, you don't know your opening acts. And often that sort of, believe it or not, it pushes the audience one way or the other, depending on what kind of comic or opening speaker you have. So tonight was great. It was killer robots, and everybody is surveilling you with cameras. And the government is going to take over everything, and these robots are going to come kill us all. Now for the comedy of Johnny Steele. Boo! This is where the audience would boo if I actually could really hear the audience very much. Anyway, all right, I have some other notes. What were they? I don't even remember. Oh, yeah. Some wonderful things you people are talking about. These are great issues to be discussing and whatnot. And, whether it's killer drones or tracing or killer robots or surveillance that people might get their hands on, these are all issues that need to be looked into in the world of technology. But I'll tell you, I have my own problem. Here's the problem about my concern that you should look into this ethics problem. Here's the deal. I pay about $15 a month to rent my router. And then I pay like $50 a month for my internet service provider. And then I pay another $25, $30 a month for a Hulu this and Crackle that and Amazon the other. And then I sit down at night to watch a movie here with all this brand new gear in, the Bay Area, the epicenter of global technology, some would say. And I turn on the TV, and within 7 seconds, my movie looks like a Monet painting, for Christ's sake. And then it goes to not available at this time. It's 8:30 on a weeknight. What time might the movies be available, for heaven's sake? I don't know about if NATO can find out who wants to burn down the internet provider who can't give me my movie at 9 o'clock at night. Anyway, I know, first world problems. People always say that. First world problems. Oh, that's first world problems. Well, interestingly enough, that's where I live, in the first world. So therefore, that's a problem for me. I don't have an opportunity to come in at night and tell my wife that it was a bad day because the yak stepped on a landmine and now we can't plow the field. That's not going to happen here. I hope it doesn't happen to anybody, and I'm sure it does. But my first world problem is I shell out hundreds of dollars a month and then can't watch the damn movie at night. And this is my tech issue. Thank you. All right. So where were we? I think my time is up, right? Is that it? I just got the light. If I'm even on, I can't even know. If I'm not, doesn't matter. Anyhow, so what else about the tech? Yeah, the tech people, I don't know a tremendous amount of them. I do have some neighbors who are tech people. And it's interesting because from what I'm learning is my career is over thanks to can't perform live anymore. But the tech people are simply moving home because they don't need to be in the office anymore, which is very interesting. So I know a lot of them. I thought, well, God, isn't that weird? You can't go to the office and you can't be with other people. And from what I understand, a lot of the tech people are very comfortable being home alone because that's how most of them spent prom night in high school. So I also teach comedy. And so anybody interested in knowing about comedy, this is generally the way you like to just piss off the audience if possible, which the one advantage to doing comedy on the phone is that some guy can't try to attack you from the audience. But as Debbie said, I played football years ago, so I'm generally not too worried about that. The one big beef I have, and my friend works for this tech company, sort of, where you have a device that hooks to your wall and you exercise, and then the trainer's on a screen and all that. And that would be great because I'm gained 10 pounds since February. And before that, I had been trying to lose 10 pounds. Before the whole shutdown, COVID, can't go to the gym, I've been trying to lose 10 pounds for 10 years, which that's a pound a year if you haven't been able to figure that out. And which is like, you know, an ounce, a little over an ounce a month. I don't know what pathetic, sad stick-to-itiveness I lack that I couldn't figure out how to lose an ounce a month. I mean, just burn a couple more calories, for heaven's sake. I mean, when you walk across the room in the morning from your bedroom to the shower halfway, just go like that. That's got to be 18 extra calories and the pounds would melt off. But now, as I notice on this camera, I got face meat. I need a little makeup because the light's a little bright. Where's my makeup for this tech show? That's my problem with these kind of things. Is that whole thing. Yeah, I miss the gym, but what I don't miss at the gym is scales. My gym had scales like stepping stones in a frog pond, for heaven's sake. They were everywhere. Hey, I get you couldn't step without stepping on a scale. I get it. Scales, overweight, lose 10 pounds. Here's an idea. Why don't you put the scales at the bakery, for heaven's sake, where the scales could do some good. This is where the laughter would be, were there an audience. That were actually in my living room, whatnot. Well, I have to wrap it up here. I have to get moving here and knock off a few pounds. But congratulations to you for putting this together. And I don't know. The issues are that you're looking at are pretty huge. I'm just trying to find the remote and figure out why my car alarm won't go off. So if you have any of those tech issues that any of these people that I haven't pissed off yet could come talk to me about, please do. Thank you guys very much. I'll return you to the lovely and attractive Debbie Durst. And yes, Will Durst, please recover. We love. Hey, Debbie's gone. How you doing? Debbie, you look great. I don't know. The blue looks great on you. You would never wear blue, but now you look great in it. So wait a minute. Thank you very much for having me. Are you there? Are you gone? All right. Debbie, you look great. That blue sweater on you looks beautiful, and I love your hair. Oh, wait, that's you.
That's me. Now it's me. Now it's me. Yeah, thank you.
You have to be a certain age during a Zoom where you go like this.
Because it's a Zoom. Get it? You're so wacky.
Thank you so much, Johnny Steele. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Mr. Durst and everybody doing all the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny. Thank you, Nato.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thanks, Mari. Thanks, Mikey. Thanks, Fahid. This was great.
Yep. I want to show one video from Will Durst that we didn't get a chance to see. We ran into a technical glitch. So this is a short video of his last event with us. So, Combis, if you don't mind playing that video.
Hey guys, Will Durst here with a few choice words about a group, a wonderful group, doing some great work, and they're called ethicsintech.com. And I know what you're saying, ethics in tech, wow, that sounds like an oxymoron. That's like saying vegetarian butcher, or kosher pork tartare, or Catholic condom supply house, or George W. Bush think tank, or Donald Trump guide to etiquette and manners. And you're right. But they're here to help, and they do with a smile. Every event that you go to will have a comedy component, along with expert speakers and panel discussions and audience community participation. So come on down, check out ethicsintech.com, and you can see past events, and you can read the blog, and you can see about upcoming events. So ethicsintech.com. It's simple, and you might want to consider volunteering, or throwing them a couple of bucks here and there. Any and or all donations will be accepted and appreciated. Ethics in tech. It doesn't have to be an oxymoron.
But I just want you to know that we're very active online social media sites. I want to thank all the presenters today and all the comedians. This event would not have been possible without them, especially with Campaign to Stop Killer Robots and Electronic Frontier Foundation and the Church of Fellowship of All People, as well as all the comedians that we had tonight: Nato Green, Johnny Steely, Mike and Mari, and Debbie Durst. Thank you so much all for your presentations, and of course my dear colleague Brett Wilkins. One thing I would like to encourage you to do is find a way to support us. We are not funded by any corporation. We are doing this grassroots, and grassroots means getting your involvement. So feel free to send us messages, subscribe to our email list, subscribe to our social media handles, and get engaged in the conversation. Hopefully we'll do these events in person so I can shake your hand in person, but that's not possible for now, and we'll be continuing with these events live on the web. Our next event is on August 6th at the same time at 6:30 to 8:15. It will be with Cindy Cohen and Mary Wirm from Campaign to Stop Killer Robots and the Executive Director of Electronic Frontier Foundation, Cindy. We'll have other speakers, including Janet Wheel from Code Pink, previously with Code Pink and SF 99% Coalition, and Reverend Dorsey Blake. So looking forward to seeing you on August 6th. Again, it will be a free event. All we ask for is your support, your time, and your enthusiasm. And for that, we're forever grateful. Thanks again for tuning in tonight.